What is Firepoint Energy's solution to the problem of waste coal?
The problem's been around for decades, in some cases even a century. Our solution is to take the leftover non-valuable waste coal, grind it up, turn it into a powder, run it through what's called a plasma gasifier, convert it into a gas to convert that gas into jet fuel. At the same time, we can extract rare earth elements, and when we've done processing the waste coal, we're left with just rock, ash, and some ores, all being sterile.
What is sustainable aviation fuel?
So sustainable aviation fuel, or SAF, as it's called in the industry, is a cleaner burning jet fuel. It must typically be made from things like ethanol or corn or palm oils. That's your traditional route to create a cleaner burning fuel, which they consider to be carbon neutral. It's cleaner burning than standard petroleum derived jet fuel. In our case, we're producing a fuel through what's called a Fischer-Tropsch system, and we have no sulfur in the fuel, and we have very little to no particulates. So if you see a jet engine crank up, you'll see like a bunch of smoke coming out. We don't produce that smoke. If you held up a jar of jet fuel and a jar of sustainable aviation fuel, in our case, ours looks like water. Theirs is kind of yellowish color like a gasoline or diesel fuel.
What makes sustainable aviation fuel so sought after?
Globally, the airlines burn 90 billion with a B gallons of jet fuel every year, emitting a lot of particulates and sulfur oxides up into the atmosphere. So airlines are looking for ways to cut back on that particular emission and particular sulfur emissions. And that sparked an interest back probably half a decade or so to have cleaner burning jet fuel. If you have normal jet fuel to make it cleaner, it would go from being as cheap as it is, which is around $2 something a gallon, to probably $4 or $5 by the time they purified it out in the petroleum industry. We start with a cleaner product. So we're producing a fuel that's cleaner, and the airlines are seeking after that. Again, out of 90 billion gallons, there's only 50 million gallons of sustainable aviation fuel available in the world.
How do you get sustainable aviation fuel from waste coal?
So in the 1920s to the 1940s, Germany had no petroleum, so they were converting lignite coal into syngas and syngas into fuels. And that process is what's still used today. Sasol in Africa still produces fuel from coal. Again, even producing from coal is cleaner burning than producing it from petroleum. There are companies looking to take natural gas and convert it into cleaner burning fuels. In our case, we take waste coal. It's lying around on the ground. When we're done, we've cleaned up that coal pile. So there's one aspect of we're cleaning up an area. And the second aspect is that we do the same thing the Germans did, convert the coal to a gas, the gas to a fuel, and it's a cleaner fuel than petroleum derived.
What are rare earth elements?
There are 17 elements called lanthanides, or rare earth elements. They're, as a misnomer, not really rare. The entire planet's covered with them, but they're so sparsely distributed across the planet, it's hard to bring them all together. These elements, the 17 lanthanides, are what makes our smartwatches possible today. It makes the new fighter jets possible, electric cars like neodymium, and different elements and metals that we now use today. Even though they've known about rare earths in Pennsylvania for over 70 years, there just wasn't a market for it until now, because technology is driving the need for these rare earth elements.
What is it that makes rare earth elements so valuable, especially now?
Market, your smartwatch, your cell phone, the new TV screens, defense fighter jets. The demand is now here that creates a need. Unfortunately, China controls roughly 92% of all the rare earth minerals we need for the United States to survive and to thrive and to grow. And that's why we're working to develop and find those minerals here in the United States, particularly starting out in Pennsylvania. So this need is going to keep growing on an exponential basis as technology drives demand.
How do you physically or chemically extract rare earth elements from waste coal?
The primary process is hydrometallurgy. It's a process we developed in the United States. In the 1980s, we sent the technology to China, one, because cheap labor. Number two, because you use a lot of toxic acids, ionic fluids, and such. So in our case, we found that the Chinese figured out that if I just went out here to the waste coal pile and I the waste coal through acids and ionic fluids, I'd recover about 23% of the minerals entrained in it. If I heat that same ash or waste coal up to 1,000 degrees, the recovery rate goes to 98 to 100%. So in a nutshell, we're using the processes the Chinese perfected. When the ash and ore come out of our gasifier, they're at 1,000 degrees. They'll go right into what's called a Denver flotation tank. Each tank will have different acids, ionic fluids. One of them is citric acid. And each acid or ionic fluid extracts a different mineral. So it's a fluid-based technology. The Denver flotation tank we use, for example, is when this stuff's in there doing its process, it's aerating and it looks like chocolate milk on top in the bubbles. And then a paddle wheel scoops those bubbles off into a container, and that's the raw concentrate of the rare earths. That's how we'll do it here. There are scientists trying to develop other processes, but they're nowhere near scale of processing hundreds or thousands of tons per day.
What is plasma gasification?
First off, let's answer what is gasification. If I light a piece of firewood or a piece of paper, you'll typically look over top of it and you'll see the flame above it that's actually burning the gases that are being released by the combustion of the wood. So if we take that process and put it in a pressure cooker and starve it of oxygen, the process still goes on, but it then begins to create what's called syngas, carbon monoxide, carbon dioxide, and hydrogen. That gas is what we turn into fuels. The most efficient gasification process is plasma gasification, plasma being the fourth state of matter. So we're actually injecting plasma streams into the gasifier, which expedites and speeds up the process of what's called molecular dissociation, or ripping the molecules apart, so that we can get back to carbon, oxygen, nitrogen, hydrogen, whatever, for them to recombine back into syngas. So in a nutshell, it's a pressure cooker with a bunch of torches in it that work by stripping ions off of electricity probes. It's the only way I could describe it. And that causes whatever is inside that pot to dissociate into atoms.
How does a gas to liquid system work?
So a gas to liquids, or a GTL plant, again, 1920s technology, 1920s, 1940s. Again, think of a great big pressure cooker. Inside of this pressure cooker are catalysts. Different catalysts produce different fuels. The catalyst we're using is made by Haldor Topsoe. And when our syngas that we've made from waste coal or trees or tires, whatever, goes into that GTL plant, the catalyst convert it back into from a solid to a gas to a liquid state. In the case of what we're doing, the catalyst will convert 80% of the syngas passing through right into jet fuel that we could go pump into an airplane today. So that's our most profitable process. The other 20% we'll use to make diesel fuel for all of our equipment. So we won't need to buy a fuel for anything we're doing here, and we'll provide jet fuel for the airline industries.
What are the other uses for synthetic gas within the Firepoint energy model aside from making liquid fuels?
One of the things we looked at when we design a plant is we need a lot of power, megawatts of power. And we could tap into the grids here locally, but we can run that syngas through a turbine, like a GE turbine that makes electricity. Several of our gasifiers can run what's called a GE TM2500 turbine, and we can put out 25 to 30 megawatts of power. So all the electricity we need to run our plants is produced from some of our syngas that we produce from the waste coal. So we're energy independent. We're making our own fuels, and we can also make our own electricity. In doing so, we have extra electricity that we could dump on the grid, or in our case, we'll use it for Bitcoin mining.
How does Firepoint Energy determine which waste coal piles are project worthy?
There are roughly 9,700 waste coal piles in the state of Pennsylvania. Many of them have been capped for decades. They just look like big hills, but underneath that hill is a bunch of coal. That's the case here. And when I started out in Pennsylvania, I started on the eastern side of PA, and I literally drove up and down across the entire state, looking at maps, looking for bald spots, and I would drive to these bald spots and find waste coal piles. We look for waste coal piles that at least have several million tons of waste coal, because we build the plant here. We don't build a plant somewhere and truck the coal. We actually build the plant at the site. And out of the sites we've looked at, we've done an analysis of the waste coal to look for rare earth elements, alumina, cobalt, and a bunch of other minerals. We look at the size of the pile, and then we look at the BTU value, and then we look at where it's at. I mean, some of these sites that I visited in PA are like this, like that. So we may not build data centers there. We may build a fuel plant there. We have some sites that would be good for data centers or electricity production. So that's how we analyze a site, is topography. We're looking at the coal, BTUs, mineral content, fuel productions, whatever. And then we make a decision. And we've selected numerous sites across the state, which we've done spreadsheets on to determine the value of a pile. And some of these piles, I think, well, the piles we're selecting, the lowest one's like $1 billion of net worth coming out of that pile to tens of billions of dollars. So that kind of helps decide things too.
How long does it take for Firepoint Energy to fully dispose of the waste coal at a project site?
When we look at the size of the waste coal, for example, there's 4 million tons where I'm sitting at now up the hill. We try and design the plant to run for at least 20 years so that we're providing good, stable jobs for a while. Number two is the longer we stretch out a pile processing, the cheaper our equipment gets, because it takes less equipment. We can do it in short amounts of time, but it may double, in some cases, triple the amount of money we have to spend for equipment. So at this site, we'll have about $170 million of equipment invested here. It will process this waste coal pile in 20 years, but less than 3 miles from here is 600,000 tons. And a guy just came by the other day, he's got a few 100,000 tons. So within 10 miles or less, we could probably get another 5 or 10 million tons that could keep a plant like this going for another few decades.
What will happen to XL Plus and XL Plus's stock after the reverse merger with Firepoint Energy is completed?
Since our last newsletter, we've had a lot of inquiries about stock. Number one, you cannot buy XLPI stock, even though it's on the OTC markets today, because there are no market makers. So there's no market for the stock, which is why you can't purchase any on the open market, even though it's like 0.0008 cents or something. If you're a shareholder of XL Plus stock before the merger, you'll still be a shareholder in the new company, but the name will no longer be XL Plus, it will be Firepoint Energy. And then all of the shareholders that are in Firepoint Energy will be acquired by XL Plus. That's why it's called a reverse IPO. In a nutshell, everybody will be a shareholder in Firepoint Energy. XL Plus will no longer exist. So if you're holding XLPI stock, it'll be Firepoint stock. If you're a Firepoint shareholder, it'll be Firepoint trading on the OTC markets. And one other question that kind of comes in is what market we're looking at. Initially, we are looking at the OTC markets, but if a few stars align, we may move to NASDAQ. No guarantees, but it is being looked at. But right now, we can say we'll be on the OTC markets. And we don't know what the new stock symbol will be until FINRA signs it.